Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're diving into a topic that I know can feel really overwhelming for any parent or caregiver, the possibility of an intellectual disability. Our whole goal here is to cut through the noise, the confusion, and the anxiety, and really just focus on what matters most, understanding and support.
And this right here, this is the guiding principle for everything we're about to talk about. It's really about a shift in how we look at things, moving away from labels and limitations, and instead meeting a child exactly where they are. It's about finding the right tools to help them thrive. That's our foundation for this entire conversation.
Okay, let's just tackle this one head on, because it is a huge misconception. When people hear intellectual disability, it's so easy to get fixated on a number, on an IQ score. But the reality? It's so much bigger and more complex than that. This isn't just about a test. It's about how a child learns, how they reason through things, how they communicate, and how they handle all those little daily tasks that make up their world.
So, that's what we're going to do. We're going to put that single number aside and really focus on seeing the whole child. What makes them unique? What are their strengths? And yeah, what are their challenges? That's the full picture we're after.
So let's start with the basics. What are we actually talking about when we use this term intellectual disability? Let's get a really clear look at it.
At its core, intellectual disability is a neurodevelopmental condition. Now, I know that sounds like a technical term, but all it really means is that it's about how the brain develops. And what that can look like is a slower pace of learning, some real difficulties with things like logic and problem solving, and, challenges with those everyday skills that many of us just take for granted.
And this is where that definition starts to feel real, right? These are the kinds of things you might actually notice day to day. We're not just talking about struggling in school. It could be something like having a hard time planning the steps to get dressed in the morning or getting easily distracted. These markers give us a much clearer picture than any single test score ever could.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. Identifying these challenges isn't about putting a ceiling on a child's potential. Not at all. It's actually about finding the key to unlock that potential by giving them the right kind of support. So, this naturally brings up two huge questions for any parent, right? When should I be concerned enough to maybe get some help? And why might this be happening? Let's dig into that next. Think of this list as just a gentle guide. If you're noticing a consistent pattern, your child is really struggling in school, or it's taking them a lot longer than their peers to talk or get dressed, it might be worth looking into. You should always trust your gut and listen if a teacher or your pediatrician raises a concern. This isn't about jumping to conclusions. It's just about gathering more information so you can help your child.
One of the first questions parents ask is, why? And the honest truth is, there's rarely a single, simple answer. As you can see here, the potential causes are incredibly varied. They can happen at different points in development, before birth, during birth, or even in early childhood. The most important thing to remember here is that this is not about finding blame. It's just about understanding the whole story.
So, let's say you decided to get an evaluation. What happens now? This can feel like the most intimidating part for parents, so let's just demystify it. We're going to break down the process step by step to show you how it leads to a clear plan of action. Okay, so the evaluation process is really a journey. It starts with a deep dive into your child's developmental history. Then, yes, there's standardized testing to get a sense of their cognitive abilities. But step 3 is so crucial, a review of adaptive functioning. It's just a fancy term for how your child manages in the real world, things like communication, social skills, and self-care. It's only after putting all those pieces together that a professional can give you feedback and, if appropriate, a diagnosis that points directly to a real, concrete plan. And let me just say this again because it's so important. This entire process is about understanding your child in their real, everyday life. It's not about chasing a score. It's about creating a practical, genuinely useful roadmap to help them succeed. All right, let's quickly clear up a few common questions, because some of the terms can get a little confusing. First up, is an intellectual disability the same thing as a learning disability? The short answer is no. They're different. Think of it this way. An intellectual disability is broad. It affects a wide range of cognitive and daily life skills. A learning disability, on the other hand, like dyslexia, is much more specific. So a child with a learning disability might really struggle with reading, but be totally average or even gifted in other areas like math or art.
Now for the big one. The question that's on pretty much every parent's mind. What does this mean for school? Can my child still go to a typical school?
And the answer here is actually really hopeful.
It completely depends on the child. For some kids, a mainstream school with the right supports in place is the perfect fit. For others, a more specialized school gives them the environment they need to really thrive. There's no single right answer here. The whole goal is just to find the best possible fit for your child.
So, what happens after a diagnosis is made? Is that kind of the end of the line for things like therapy? Let's talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. A diagnosis isn't the end of the journey. It's the start of a much more focused one. Therapies, like speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapy, they become even more vital because now they can be perfectly tailored to your child's specific needs to help them build communication skills, confidence, and independence.
And that really brings us to our final and I think most important section. A diagnosis is not a dead end. In fact, it can be the very thing that unlocks a child's true potential because it's the key to getting them the exact support they need to succeed.
This is something I really want you to hold on to. While the underlying condition itself might not go away, a child's abilities absolutely can and do grow. With the right, targeted support, so many children make incredible progress, learning new skills and becoming more independent as they grow.
When you strip everything else away, it all comes down to this, doesn't it? Every single child deserves to be fully understood for who they are, and every parent deserves to have calm, clear guidance on how to help them. That is what a proper evaluation gives you, a foundation of understanding you can build everything else on.
So if there is just one thing you take away from our time together, please let it be this. A diagnosis is not an endpoint. It is not the end of the story. It is a starting line. It's the beginning of a new, more informed, and more supportive chapter, where you can get your child exactly what they need to reach their own amazing, unique potential. Thanks so much for joining me.